Last week at these number of passages deal with Jesus, who is God in the flesh, and we dealt, I thought, fairly well with that last week. And just remind ourselves of some of the key elements and the powerful passages that reflect who Jesus is and what He's done for us. Probably you need to memorize this one because it's one that you come up with practically all the time, but it's such a powerful passage and it says so much. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through Him. Apart from Him, with nothing came into being that has come into being. And the Word, verse 14, became flesh and dwelt among us. We saw His glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. The Bible is powerful, and if you read it properly, like Johnny did the other day, you read it properly and you can get a lot more out of it than just reading quietly. It's really a wonderful source of strength. And if you can memorize it like Frank does and still able to do that at 92, that would be a bonus, I think. But it's beautiful stuff. So that's the passages. This particular passage, Albert Winsley, when I was at Bible school, Albert Winsley said, I want you to memorize the first 18 verses of the Gospel of John. I happened to be preaching at Birmingham that next week, that next following Sunday. So I took my wife in the car with me, Susan and I were in the car, and I said to her, in this journey over to Birmingham, I want to memorize the 18 verses. So by the time we got to about Northampton, she had them memorized. My exam was 2 weeks later, and I still hadn't got it. My brain just was shot. Anyway, but that's great. But anyway, my wife she's like Frank. She can memorize stuff and retain it, and so I need to. Hopefully, when I get a new body in heaven, I'll get a new brain to go with it.
That's not a particularly good
translation.
The Word became flesh and we saw His glory. It's not so we inspected.
I don't know if a translation actually says that.
We inspected.
I don't think it does. In the Greek, it's inspected.
But
we saw, we beheld, we examined.
We examined it. We examined the glory minutely. We inspected it. We made sure we knew what it was.
And conclusion. And here's John speaking, and he said the same thing in 1 John.
That's right.
That's really powerful. Yeah. We were there. We touched. We tasted. We were there. It's good stuff. If we can grab a hold of this. This is the kind of stuff that keeps you going through dark days. This is the kind of stuff that keeps you going when you're struggling. To remember the one that we worship and the one who died for us.
Awesome. One more thing then I'll shut up.
No problem.
and the Word was God.
Yep.
The Greek text says, and God was the Word.
What's the Word? God was the Word. Okay. Because there's no and in there.
But God was the Word. The Word Himself was God. That's what John's proving. Christ was the Word, and the Word is God.
Yep. So a lot of good stuff in there, and you'll spend the next 50 years getting familiar with it, hopefully. This is Exodus 40, verse 34. Yahweh is tabernacle. The cloud covered the tent of the meeting. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. So here we have a kind of interesting thing. Jesus came in the flesh, and we beheld His glory. When you think back to the tabernacle time, one of the things, once the tabernacle was built in the wilderness, the people of God, the Shekinah, the glory of God, dwelt within the tabernacle. It was the focus of the people's attention, the Jewish nation at the time, their attention. And then later on, when they built a temple, the Shekinah, the glory of the God dwelt in the temple. And then when they were carried off into captivity, before they were carried off into captivity, Ezekiel says the glory departed. And yet, here we have the glory come back. And later on, another passage says, the glory of God dwells, the deity dwells within us. Glory dwells within us. God is back in His rightful, where He wants to be. He wants to be in amongst us. He wants to be in us. And He wants to work through us. So that's an interesting concept here. And the word tabernacle, He tabernacled, He dwelled. He placed His tent. in the midst of. That all these kind of ideas come through that. Right from the Old Testament there all the way through. Jesus tabernacled or tented among us. When the glory filled the tabernacle, it was a sign that God was dwelling among his people. When Jesus came to step a foot upon this earth, he came to do so to bring glory back to where it ought to be among God's people. Which is an interesting concept. This Romans 10, 9 to 10, this is quite a popular passage. A lot of people are happy with this one. It says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness. With the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. For the scripture says, whoever believes in him will not be disappointed. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. For the same Lord is Lord of all, abounding in riches for all who call upon him. Whoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Okay, so again you've got the concept of Jesus Christ as Lord, Lord of our life. And he wants to dwell amongst us. And the actual, this phrase, call in the name of the Lord, you see it in, for example, Acts chapter 2, in Peter 7, he says, you're going to call in the name of the Lord, and that's a translation from Joel, a promise of Joel, or Joel the prophet, God promised through Joel, that we would call upon his name. Just before Paul gets baptized, Acts 22 verse 16, he says, be baptized, calling on his name, wash away your sins, calling upon his name. Inherent in the idea of calling upon the name of the Lord is worship. Come together to worship, and it can be in lots of different forms, it can be lots of different ways to worship, but the basic principle within the idea of calling on his name is to offer up worship to God. It's an Old Testament concept and a New Testament concept as well. But Jesus is Lord, he's worthy of our worship. That's basically the idea. He is worthy of our worship. And we need to be willing to confess that we believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, Lord of lords, King of kings, and God come to dwell within us. And if we do that, we will not be disappointed. Abounding in riches for all who call upon him. Whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Okay, if we're willing to put him in his place, where God places him, then we will have salvation through him. And it's the same Greek word as Kyrios, Lord, is used, both of God and Christ. Have this attitude amongst you, who is also in Christ Jesus, who although he existed in the form of God, didn't regard equality with God a thing to be held onto, grasped, but he emptied himself, and he took on the form of a bond servant, and being made in the likeness of men, being found in the appearance of man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. For this reason God highly exalted him and bestowed upon him the name which is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow, of those who are in heaven and earth and under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. It's these beautiful words, powerful words. And one day, whether you like it or not, whether you believe in them or not, one day every knee will bow before Jesus Christ, Lord of lords and King of kings. But it's interesting, he was prepared to humble himself. He was prepared to empty himself of all the lots of vestiges of deity in order to become one of us, to communicate with us, to live with us, to show us how to overcome sin, how to overcome temptation, and how to live a victorious life in that relationship with God. And that's a phenomenal thing. Sometimes we'll humble ourselves. Sometimes we'll mix with the lowly. Sometimes we'll think, well, you know, really I'm better than this, but on this occasion I'll you know, mix with people that I don't really normally mix with. Jesus, God of gods, Lord of lords, King of kings, he emptied himself, took on the form of a servant, a bond servant, it says, the lowest of the low, if you like. He said he was prepared to do that in order to save us. Paul says something not the same but similar But he says, I become all things to all men. The Apostle Paul was very highly educated. He was of the elite class of the Pharisees. So he was a Jew above Jews, above the normal circuit of Jews. He was one of the leaders, if you like. And yet he also, in his willingness to profess Christ, he took himself that on. He said in one place, if you read that particular translation, he says, I counted all that as dung. That was all rubbish. All that prestige, all that money, all that background, all that aristocracy was nothing. I gave it all up. And I was glad to give it up for the sake of Christ. And it's a similar idea. Jesus was prepared to leave the glory of heaven to come to earth in order to help to save us. The Apostle Paul was willing to leave behind all that background. Some people think the Apostle Paul was married. And even in his becoming a Christian, he lost his wife. He may have lost his family, because even today we've met people in Corby here. There was a guy come up from London one time. He was a Jew, and his family had a funeral service when he became a Christian. No rejoicing. Oh, he's become a Christian. Oh, really good. The family had a funeral service. They cut him off from everything. He was no longer a child of them. He couldn't go on the phone and say, "Hi, Mom. This is your son speaking." She would say, "I don't have a son." Isn't that terrible? And yet, that's what some people are willing to go through. And yet we complain. Somebody turned to me the other day and he said, "Are you Christians?" And he was horrible to me. Oh dear, oh dear. Hey, is that how we sometimes feel? And we've been abused? Goodness gracious me. Jesus left the glory of heaven to become one of us, to suffer, to be beaten, to be spat on. And yet he did all that we might have salvation. The Apostle Paul left all the glory that he had in order to be one of them, one of the ones who used to persecute, one of the ones who used to drag off and put into prison, one of the ones where, in Stephen's case, he was holding the clothes, the jackets. Here, lad, let me hold your jacket. Go on, throw some more stones at him. Wow, what a background, what a change. And he's left the glory of heaven for us. Beautiful stuff. Isaiah says, "By myself I have sworn, my mouth has uttered in all integrity a word that will not be revoked. Before me every knee will bow, and by me every tongue will swear." So Isaiah is prophesying what Jesus would do one day. What Jesus will do. Every knee will bow before him. He rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of our sins. That's another beautiful passage. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is also the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn of the dead, so that he himself will come to have the first place in everything. For it was the Father's good pleasure for all the fullness of God, basically, to dwell in him. That's Colossians chapter 1, 17 and 19. A beautiful passage, powerful passage. We like Ephesians at the moment. Who's enjoying Ephesians? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a cracking book? Well, read Colossians as well. That's the other side. It's good stuff. The very first verse. He rescued us from the domain, from the dominion, from the kingdom of darkness. He rescued us from Satan's power. And he transferred us, he moved us over into his kingdom. The kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have what? Redemption. We've been bought back with a price. We've been redeemed. I've been redeemed. That's a good song, isn't it? I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Filled with the Holy Ghost I am. All my sins are washed been redeemed, I've been redeemed. Oh, we've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed. If you, in the old days, this is even when I was young, I didn't experience it much, but in Glasgow, in the big cities, when people went to church on a Sunday morning, they went to church in a suit. The problem was they needed money for the week. So they'd take the suit down to the local pawn shop and they'd put it in. And they'd get money for it, and they'd use that money until payday. And then when it came payday again, the weekend was coming around, they went back to the shopkeeper and they redeemed, they bought back their suit that they might be able to go to church on Sunday morning. A crazy life to live. They redeemed, they bought back. We have been bought with the blood of the Lamb. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 13. We haven't been bought with perishable things, such as silver or gold. Perishable things, such as precious things, such as silver. No, perishable things, such as silver and gold. We haven't been bought with what the world sees as important. We've been bought with the blood of Jesus Christ. The blood that was shed to buy us back to God. God wants us to come back to Him. God wants us to spend our eternity with Him. And He was willing to buy back. And the price that He paid was the blood of His Son upon the cross. Isn't that magic? That's the wrong word. Isn't that awesome? That's a better word. Okay? It's not magic, it's awesome. God stepped into humanity and allowed Himself to be crucified on a tree that you and I might be able to spend eternity with Him. He cares about you. He loves you. He wants us to be with Him. And He has taken us, He could see the mess we're in sin. He could see the control Satan had in our lives. And He says, here, I want to transfer you out of that junk. And I want to place you in my kingdom. I want you to be with me forever. And so He transfers us into the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom redemption, the forgiveness of our sins. How many people want a second chance? Jesus has done that. He's paid the price that we might have a second chance. And who is it? Who is this person who is willing to die upon a cross? He was the image of the invisible God. What's God like? How can I know what God's like? Is he some big mass of something sitting in a cloud somewhere? Awesome in power and lightning coming out and bolts coming out? Is that what God's like? Is that what He wants you to understand? Well, I think God is awesome. But God is more than that. So in the practical aspect of the life of Jesus, He demonstrates love in action. He shows compassion. He's by the tombside and Lazarus is dead and Mary and Martha are standing there and He said, I wish if only you'd come, we wouldn't have needed to die. And the passage says Jesus wept. Now whether He wept because He could see the destruction that sin and the death brings in people's lives and He was empathizing with the two sisters, was he weeping because He recognized that sin has such consequences that it destroys things and tears people apart, and He just so frustrated with all of that people are still going to go down that road? Or whatever it was, He definitely showed compassion, and He wept. And there's other passages when He saw people, and an actual text says He showed compassion on them.
Oh, Jerusalem.
Oh, Jerusalem. Goodness, that's another one, isn't it? Crying, I would have loved to gather you like a broody hen gathers its chicks under its wings to protect them. But you wouldn't.
He was aware of the attributes of man before He got under the water and got the Holy Spirit.
Some people say that Jesus was just a normal kid, didn't know anything up until the time that the Spirit came upon him. The Spirit didn't come upon him to inspire Jesus. Jesus came to John. The Spirit came upon Jesus, or was seen on Jesus, because John was told, the guy that you see the Spirit coming on, that is the Son of God.
Identifying, yes.
So it's identification. Jesus wasn't given special powers when He was baptized. He wasn't given He was God before that. He recognized his role, but his time hadn't come. Time after time, actually, he says, while he teaches, my time hasn't come to demonstrate who he was. And that's why, if you like, in Paul in Romans chapter 1, the first 3-4 verses there, when Jesus died on the cross, the people looking at the three people on the cross thinking, well, there's another one. Matter of fact, if they've gone back a couple of years, practically every time a Roman emperor, or a Roman victorious army leader, commander, came back into Rome, he would have a whole procession in front of him. And the Appian Way, for some of them, they would have people that they were slaves, they would have up to 3,000 crosses lying in the sides of the road as this mighty commander showing his power and his strength, and really he wanted to impress Rome, saying, look, you better give me what I want, because this is what I've done elsewhere, and if you don't give me what I want, I'll be coming for you as well. So they were frightened really when they saw these commanders like Nero and Augustine and some of these coming back to Rome, because their armies were powerful armies, and they were quite happy when they were away playing in other countries, dominating other people. But when the commander came home and would bring his army home with him, that was a bad time. But one of the ways that they would demonstrate the power is they would have all these slaves just crucified, lying on the edge of the roads. And here's three guys on a hill outside Jerusalem. And to the average person who was familiar with what the Romans used to do, all they would see would be three other guys. There would be no real significance in that, apart from the fact that it certainly everything went dark. Apart from the fact that in the temple, suddenly the curtain ripped from the top to the bottom, and an immense curtain, and it just, and apart from the fact of the earthquakes, a few other odds that they got, nothing special about these three guys in the hell. But when Peter stands up, this Jesus whom you crucified, God has made both Lord and Christ, seated at the right hand. Paul, writing in Romans chapter 1, done friends in the first 4 or 5 verses, God demonstrated who Christ was by the power of the resurrection. So there's lots of stuff going on here. So Jesus was, but yeah, in answer to your question, Jesus was always, I believe, aware that he was deity. Even in his youth and his childhood, especially his youth anyway. Once he started getting to know the scriptures, because the way he handled the scriptures, that's why as a boy, when he's there in Jerusalem, when he took the journeys into Jerusalem, what's the word, special word for those, when you go back to Jerusalem? For the special festivals. And where was he? He should have been, all the parents were ready to walk, were going back home. And I thought Jesus was here. No, where is he? I don't know. We'll have to go back and find him. And where is he? He's in there and he's talking to the leaders. And he's asking them questions and answering their questions. And they're thinking, wow, this kid's something special, isn't he? And his parents say, I could have strangled you. They say, where have you been? Where? Didn't you know I've been about my father's business? A 12-year-old. So he knew there was something different, special about him. Whether he knew all that that meant, I don't know. But it was nothing special. The dove coming and the dove being seen at his baptism wasn't for him. It was for John to recognize who he was. John with this message, preparing the way of the Lord, the king's coming, the king's coming. And in the prophecy he's told, when you see the Spirit descend like a dove, you will know that that's the king. And so he's, you can say, he's knocking his pan out day after day, week after week, month after month, seeing loads of people come to be baptized. And then all of a sudden this guy steps forward and he recognizes something different about you. And then the confirmation of the dove. Wow. And then of course the voice. This is my beloved son. So John had no doubt these messages was right. But then when John made a mistake, some people would say, of pointing the finger at poor old Herodias and the Herod there, and he ends up in prison. He's sitting in a dark prison all by himself, and he thinks, have I got it right? Is this what it's all about? I'm supposed to be out there proclaiming the good news. I'm stuck in it. What's happened? Was he really the king? And then he sends his followers back to Jesus, and Jesus says, you tell John, the blind can see, the lame can walk, this is happening, that's happening. You've done the right thing. You did your job. You can die happy. He basically could have said that to God, He didn't really say that. In my interpretation, okay, he said, don't worry about the prison, okay? And don't even worry about death. Because I am the one that you are to point the finger to. And you've done that. You've done your bit. So all the rest is bonus. Okay?
I'm sure John thought that when the sword chopped his head off.
Yeah, well, it's real. Do we want to go to heaven? Yes. Do we fancy facing death? No. Depends what kind of death. Yeah. If I'm out walking one day and I suddenly turn left and a car smacks me and I'm gone, then not a problem. I wasn't aware of it. But if it's a long, lingering death of cancer,
or crucifixion,
if a couple of guys from your warehouse come in and nail you to the back door somewhere,
Jesus died the death of the righteous.
Well, this is it. Are you ready? That's the real key. Are you ready? If you're not, you could say when they're beating you to death, say, I'm not ready to go yet. Goodness gracious, let me get right to God first. Too late. Because we never know the day or the hour. That's what Jesus says. And so, there's a lot of stuff involved in that. But he is the image of the invisible God. What's God like? Learn what Jesus is like. Learn how Jesus dealt with people. He hated sin. Not because of the sin, but because of the damage it could do to people. Okay? He loved the sinner. No, because he hated the sin. He recognized that sin is powerful. And it destroys people. He could see, because he was more, I think in his humanity, he would have been far more sensitive to things than I am. Because I don't have his level of awareness. And that's a good thing, okay? Someday, my wife's got a good memory, alright? And some days I'm glad I've got a bad memory. Because some nights when she goes to bed and our mind won't stop, it's churning over all this, that, next thing, and I go to bed, I go, and she, oi, waking up, why should you sleep when I'm glad. My memory saves me a lot of heartache, especially when I've done wrong. Okay, I want to forget some of those things. But there are some people there was one man, we talk, I love Frank's memory. I wish I could download it, okay? But there was a guy who, during the war, was a mentalist, to call him, and he had a photographic memory. And he ended up killing himself because he just couldn't switch off. People who can't forget, can't stop their mind from working. And before you know it, they're driven nuts by it. So there's a good and bad element, Frank. I know when you will be up half the night because you can't forget.
I'm going to say you can train your memory to forget things.
That's fine. I'm going to
You can discipline your memory. Some things I don't try to remember.
Okay.
I just banish them.
All right. Well, I try to remember. But it's it's a blessing and a curse. Everything's got a blessing and a curse. But when we see Jesus, he was the image of the invisible God. So if we want to know what God's like, we need to read all about Jesus. See how he dealt with people. He hated sin because of the impact upon sin in people's lives. He hated hypocrisy because he could see these guys strutting about, look at me, praying in the street corner, and yet he knew what they were like at home. He said, you whitewashed walls. He compared them to tombstones. They look good on the outside, shining in the sun. He said, you look over the lid, full of dead men's bones. He says, Some of you are like that with your lives.
False.
Yeah, you pretend to be something far more than you are, he says. And he hated that type of thing. Because that's why he hated people who don't tell the truth. He said, let your yes be yes, let us be people that people can trust. You know? I'll meet you there at 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay. 12:30? Where's he gone? You know? Did you say you'd meet me here? Yeah, but I knew I wouldn't. Some people, matter of fact, the Roman Catholic Church has got a special thing, it's called mental reservation. When they were, especially the Jesuit priests, when they were making these big deals around the world and getting loads of money and loads of stuff from different countries to take back to Rome, they would make all sorts of promises. But technically, they would have their fingers crossed behind their back. So whatever they were promising the people, they knew because they weren't Roman Catholics that it didn't count. It's only when you're talking to a fellow Roman Catholic you're supposed to tell the truth. If you're talking to none, you can promise them anything, it doesn't matter. They're non-Catholic.
You're lying then.
Yeah, it's more, but no, it's not lying. It's mental reservation. Economical with the truth. Alright? But it's interesting. Actually, it's so big you've got a name for it. That's amazing, really. We ought not to be like that. God hates that. He wants us to be people that people can trust. So when we say something, we mean it. Now, that doesn't mean that there's lots of times when we say something, we do mean to do it. But obviously circumstances may get in the way of doing that. And that's understandable. God's not talking about that. But God's talking about someday when we say, oh, I'll be there. There's no intention of being there.
Blatantly lying, knowing it's
That's,
lying.
yes. Okay, that's what God. So Jesus, when you see him deal with people in the first century, then we learn from that, and hopefully we learn how to deal with that. So, he is above all things. He is the head of the body. Okay? We have only one, the church has only one head, and that's Jesus. He's the one. What does the head do normally? What does the head do normally? It controls the body. That's what the brain tells the rest of the body what it's supposed to do. Okay? Jesus is our head. So he's the one we ought to listen to. And we are his body, the church, the family of God. And that's a close relationship. How close a relationship have you got with your head? Eh? Are you listening to the head? You know, if it's stuck in a wall somewhere, you take it out every now and again. Oh, what was that you said? No, we're joined together. We're joined so close. We are one. Jesus is our head, and we are his body. So there's a relationship. There's a closeness. There's a unity that ought to be found between the head and the body. And it was his Father, good pleasure, to have all the fullness of deity dwell. And later on, because we are his family, the beauty of it is, deity comes to dwell in us. Deity comes to dwell in us. Absolutely amazing. Powerful stuff. He, Jesus, is the radiance of his glory, the exact representation of his nature. He upholds all things by his word of power. Of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever. Now it's interesting. Some people say, well, Jesus is never called God in the Bible. Is that right? Of the Son, he said, your throne, O God, is forever. The Hebrew writer making that such a powerful statement. They were in the habit of meeting on Pliny the Younger, he was a Roman historian, and he says they, as Christians, were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light. They sang an anthem to Christ as God. So they're singing songs to Christ as God. It's an interesting leader. There's a lot of stuff being bandied around about at the moment in the religious world. And one of the things is why do we meet every Sunday? Surely, why do we break bread every Sunday? Surely we could do it maybe once every 3 months or once a year, or who cares when you break bread? Who cares when you get together? About the same time as this, from Elder Letters, one of the historians says that the Sunday was called the Die Panis. In Latin, that's the day of the bread, when Christians come together to break bread. So they actually had the first day of the week was called the Diapanis, the day of the bread. The day that Christians come together. So when we're supposed to break bread? Oh, anytime you feel like it. Oh, once a year, a couple of times a year. Every Lord's Day was called, every first day of the week was called the Diapanis at a certain point in history. Because it was known that Christians used to get together to break bread. And when they did, because they did it on that day, it became known as a special day, the Diapanis, the day of the bread. That's interesting. Just out of, that has nothing to do with this lesson, it's just thrown in for free. Anyway, now, if the Christians worshipped only one God, they might have reason on their side. This is a guy who just can't understand it. What is Jesus is God? God's God? What's going on here, he says. If these Christians worship only one God, they might have some sort of reason on their side. We can have some sort of logic in it. But as a matter of fact, they worship a man who appeared only recently. And the worship of this Jesus is even more outrageous. Because they refuse to listen to any talk about God the Father without bumming in God the Son in there. Unless they include some reference to Jesus. And they call him the Son of God. They're not really paying homage to God as we would understand it. They're attempting to exalt, to lift up Jesus. Say, heights of God. These people are nuts. Talk about you and me. Really, basically. He just can't understand it, this guy Celtus. These weird Christians. What the hell are they up to? And this is a peculiar thing. A later on papyrus where somebody come along and they said, you've got demons and all sorts of stuff going on. And we've made a little bit of saying you can use to throw out demons. He says, I conjure you by the God of the Hebrews, by Jesus, who appears in fire, who is in the midst of the land, snow and fog. And he goes on to say, but it's interesting, even here's this formula, Jesus is not uplifted as God. He's the one, the God of the Hebrews. Well, Jesus was never the God of the Hebrews, but he was the God of the Hebrews. No, he wasn't. God the Father, who was the God, or the Hebrews understand as the one true God. Jesus, when he became Jesus, was the God of the Christians, if you like. But in his pre-existence, he was the God of the Hebrews also. So even though these guys don't really know what they're talking about, they are actually saying it's true. This is one of the earliest mosaics found in a church building in Megiddo. I don't know whether you've seen this one, right? Dated from the early 3rd century. It's a whole hall where they must have come together and used to pray. And this woman must have been a rich woman, because she has actually made this mosaic, and it says Akeptos, a woman. So that should be humble. Didn't say Josephine or whatever her name was. A woman, the God-loving, offered this table for God, Jesus Christ, as a remembrance. So here's 3 centuries after the 1st century. Here's a woman does this thing and lays it out, but it's in remembrance of Jesus Christ. But Jesus Christ is who? Jesus Christ, the God, Jesus Christ. Interesting, isn't it? Early church building. So Jesus was clearly demonstrated that he believed he was God. Jesus' miracles showed his sovereignty over all creation. He could stop winds blowing, he could calm seas, he could heal, he could do all sorts of things over nature. His actions of forgiving sins and accepting worship. Remember, one of the things he took up to stone him for, you being a man, only God can forgive sins. And Jesus said to this person, I forgive your sins. And he said, take up your bed and walk. He said, you can't do that. You're claiming only God can forgive sins. Well, Jesus said, beat the man. Okay. The New Testament writers point to Jesus being God. So, when we look down the list, did Jesus of Nazareth exist? I think from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, that we can say, yes, Jesus is a real person, was a real person. Did he fulfill messianic prophecies? Over 300 prophecies in the Old Testament fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Did he appear elsewhere in history? Did other people outside of the church refer to him as a historical character? Yes. Did he himself claim to be God? We've looked at a couple of his passages where he did claim to be God. Did he prove his claim by miracles and resurrection? Yes, he did. Did the New Testament writers and others testify that he was God? Yes, they did. That's the one we believe in. That's the one we worship. So, real question, our own answer, or what we need to answer is, do we believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? Of course we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be Christians. But for the world to believe, then we need to take all that information and all our knowledge of who He is and be able to share it with other people, that they too might come to the same conclusion and have the same answer. Yes, Jesus is.
I feel and believe in Him. I feel Him. I feel God. Do you know what I mean? That's,
Okay.
Personally, I do, yeah. I believe Him, of course, but I feel Him as well.
There's some problems with feelings is, you know, the problem we have when things are going well, that sometimes we get a situation where we can feel really close to God.
Yeah.
But at other times when things are going really badly, when we feel God's no longer with us, you know, when He's left us or He's deserted us. And the problem is if we just depend upon our feelings, then it depends really sometimes what we have for breakfast. If we have a good breakfast, we'll feel good. If we're struggling in our lives, we'll feel bad and we won't feel as close to God. But the problem, the good thing about the Bible and the Holy Spirit working through the Word is that whether we feel good about our relationship or whether we feel bad about, and sometimes you will, when you feel bad about your relationship, God loves you anyway.
Yeah. The word's the word and stays the word as well, doesn't it? So
That's
let's
right.
back to that as well.
It's powerful stuff, okay?
Yeah.
But it's something that the world needs. They need Jesus. And it's something we need to be able to have written on our hearts and our minds. We need to, you know, we need to be able to tell people what we believe and why we believe it and who we believe in, that they too may hopefully come to the knowledge of the saving power of Christ, and they too will be redeemed.
Some days I feel closer than others, but my praying and my reading of the Word always stays the same regardless.
Good
The
stuff.
relationship always stays the same.
When our lives, quite often our lives, you know, Frank's been around a couple of years, Mari's been around a couple of years, Bernard's been around. There's been times in their life when they've been feeling up here. They've been everything's going perfect. As a matter of fact, it's so good, somebody thinks something bad's going to happen because things are going too well, okay? There's a lot of times in life, you know, when you lose somebody who's really close to you, when things are going roughly, there's lots of tragedy happening around you, you're down here. And the beauty of what we find in the Word of God is when we allow that to work in our lives, hopefully we'll end up not so high as we were before, but not so low as we were before. So we'll find ourselves in a more even, steady keel. Because emotions can be powerful, but they can do powerful damage if we depend on them more than, you know. That's why He gave us the Word, that we might have something concrete to hold on to when things are going rough. I'm sure that the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, when you read that passage about the sun and stuff he went through, there were times, but in fact it actually says back in Acts, in Acts I think it's about 27, right there, he's heading up to Rome, he sees, he comes to a matter of fact it's a drinking thing where he you know, he feels better when he takes some courage. He's feeling bad about things, he's struggling with things, and he comes to a certain point in the Appian, in the place called the Three Taverns.
They weren't pubs though.
No, they weren't quite the same as our pubs, but it's called the Three Taverns. And then he sees some Christians coming towards him who've come from Rome to meet him, and it says he took courage.
He took courage, yeah.
Apostle Paul, when did he ever feel down? Apostle Paul, what does he know about trouble? Apostle Paul, does he know what I'm going through and what I'm struggling with? Has he ever struggled with anything?
Yeah.
And that passage is so beautiful. powerful. He's obviously having a really bad day. And he looks up and he sees his brethren coming, and suddenly, wow, it's just like a whole weight lifts off him. It says he took courage.
Martin Luther once said, the devil said to me, Martin, do you feel that you're saved? And he said, I answered, no, but I'm just as sure as if I did.
Right? It's more, because our feelings can be up and down, you know. We've got the solid Word of God to help us stay stable even in the darkest hour. And that's why some of these passages, it's good to get familiar with them, to know them, and if to memorize them with Frank. So when you're going through bad times, you can actually say some of these things and remind yourself, God loves me. God died for me. And God wants me to get the best out of this world, one way or another. John, you're thinking?
I was thinking about when Paul prayed to God for him to remove
the thorn in the flesh.
In the flesh.
Yeah.
Was that not to help Paul stay in that stability of need, that he can't rise above?
He says, you're weak. You're made strong through your weakness.
My grace is sufficient.
My grace is sufficient. Because sometimes, if everything goes well, if we are feeling on top of the world and we feel a bit proud of how much we know and what we've done and what we achieved, you know, God says, hey, you know, there's two of us here, you know. You're not doing it all by yourself. But when we are struggling with something, when we realise our weakness, our humanity, he says, that's when you realise I'm strong. This is something I don't say often, but I have said in times past, okay? When my son drowned when he was 6, I had, up to that point, I had quite a good life. I'd done weightlifting, and I know you may not believe it. I'm still still lifting a lot of weight, but it's in the wrong place. I did weightlifting, I did life-saving, I did all sorts of stuff. And I stood beside that piece of water where I knew the body must be in there somewhere. And I thought to myself, I'm absolutely helpless. I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. I've got all these abilities, all these talents. And at this particular moment, there's nothing. Right. It's over prayer. Lead to word of prayer, Frank.